Welcome to the Unpick podcast, the podcast where we'll talk about politics, pop culture. We'll bring you all the latest news, the biggest stories. I'm Kay, and I'm joined by my co-host S. What are we doing for the people today?
So today we are going to discuss the whole Trump fiasco that's been happening over the past couple of weeks. So Trump has become the first American president to be impeached twice. And we're just going to start all the way at the beginning with the infamous call to the Georgia Attorney General. No,
Secretary of
he was
State.
Secretary of State
Yeah.
Brad I can never say his surname.
Raffensperger,
Raffensperger, yes.
which is a great name for a villain.
He is a villain, if you were to ask Stacey Abrams, but that's not what we're here to discuss today. To give a bit of background, so Trump did not win the second election, and a lot of people in America, a large proportion of people don't think that Biden is the president. They think that he cheated,
Especially Republicans.
especially Republicans. And so what has Trump done? He's gone around and court case after court case in different states to try and overturn essentially the election in these states
Yeah.
and to cast doubt on the integrity of the election. And Georgia was one of the states which has not had a Democratic senator since like 1998. Don't quote me. And so Georgia has turned blue
Yeah.
for the first time in a very long time.
Yeah.
And so, of course, Trump decided that, and also the margins that he won were quite slim because there had to be a recount because it was within the margin to warrant a recount. And so Trump has decided a couple of weeks ago that he was going to try and directly call Georgia Georgia politicians responsible for the election and essentially get him on their side. So did you listen to it was an hour-long call. Did you listen to it?
Trump tweeted that he'd had the phone call and that Brad Raffensperger was either unable or unwilling to tell the truth. Brad tweets directly back at him and basically says or hints, I've got receipts.
And did he have receipts? He had those Holland and Barrett super long receipts.
You know them ones where you have to scroll all the way down for like your 25p discount. And
Oh, you know me too well.
so the recording was released, I think, in the Washington Street or the Wall Street Journal. It was an hour long.
Yes.
I think Trump is talking for like 95% of the phone call is Donald Trump.
It's a lot of rambling, isn't it? So it's a lot of, what can you do for me?
Yeah.
I think there's a point where he says, I need those votes. And he gives a very specific number of votes that he needs, as if Brad is meant to magic this up from thin air and say, yes, actually, there was this county that we forgot to count. And actually, guess what? Mr. President, you have the votes.
I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have, because we won the state. I only need 11,000 votes. Fellas, I need 11,000 votes. Give me a break. There's nothing wrong with saying that, that you've recalculated.
Well, Mr. President, the challenge that you have is the data you have is wrong.
It's got such an old school mafia film feel to it, right? It's the mafia boss calling his captains or his like area boys and he's saying, look, I need this. What can you do for me? What are we going to do? As you said, there was a recount in Georgia. A recount is a hand recount.
Yes.
So all the stuff about the machines, if there's any fraud, it would have been detected by the hand recount. And then there was a recount of the recount.
Recounts have happened in America throughout the years, of course,
Yeah.
because very often you have elections where it's too close to call or it's within the margin of error. And historically, recounts have never changed the outcome. It's always been maybe a couple of hundreds of votes that maybe there's a change, but they've never changed anything.
Yeah.
And so the story was that these machines, which were hackable, potentially could have been hacked by, I don't know who, the Democratic National Committee. I don't know who they thought would have hacked into those. And like you said, the hand recount showed that there was no change. And so that the election was solid.
So the sitting president of the United States is calling a local state official to ask him to essentially change the outcome of the state election. In itself, this would be crazy.
Impeachable. It's impeachable.
In the context of where he's lost 70 court cases, and in none of them has he been able to produce a scintilla of evidence. I mean, we had probably the craziest press conference in history. Is it the one where between the one where the guy's got hair dye streaking down his face,
Rudy Giuliani. Oh
or
God.
the other one where
Yeah.
he's in front of a landscaping company and next to a sex shop. In the context of where you've lost 70 court cases, this was even more remarkable. And he talks about, look at the size of my rallies, therefore I must have won.
It's the same. It's the same. It's the same recycling of the same thing that happened in 2016, which was this was the biggest ever inauguration ever in the history of ever. And turns out that no, it's not. It's this thing that Trump has always got to be the biggest and the bestest, and he has the best words all the time. And I think if it wasn't Trump, this would have been an immediately impeachable offense.
I
Because you're
mean,
tampering with the national election. I mean, that's a problem.
I mean, thank goodness Trump didn't wear a tan suit, because if he'd worn a tan suit,
That tan suit. Honestly, Obama used to breathe, and they'd say he breathed in a way that showed that he was Muslim, and so he just had to go, or something crazy like that.
once did he have a hot dog with mustard? Did he have
Yes,
mustard on the
yes,
wrong?
yes. And Sean Hannity said, "Go on with your fancy Dijon mustard."
Wow.
It's just mustard. So the call happens.
Yeah.
The call ends, and the evidence comes out, and there's outrage, of course, from one side predominantly, which is the Democratic side. What this indicates is that Trump is losing his mind in a way that he's not done so over the past 4 years.
Yeah.
He's losing a grip on reality in that he's got to the end of the rope, and he knows that, because I think he assumed that with the Supreme Court packed with conservatives, that was his path to victory. Obviously, now it turns out that actually before you get to the Supreme Court, there are all these state Supreme Courts that you have to get through. And even before you get to the state Supreme Courts, there are all these federal courts that you have to get through. And these Supreme Courts are holding, they're holding the line. They're not letting Trump get through. And so what does he do? He then has this massive rally. Trump loves rallies, and I think he does it to boost his ego.
Yeah, the mental state of Trump's a really important point, and one of the biggest scoops of last year. Mental health is not a joke. And 99% of people commenting or people on Twitter are not qualified to opine on the mental state of somebody. But luckily, we've had Mary Trump, who is Trump's niece, grandniece or niece? Niece, but who's also eminently qualified psychologist. And she's been able to give us the inside scoop on Trump's mental state. Fast forward a couple of weeks, we get to this massive rally. Now, before the rally of the 6th of January, Trump had been egging on his supporters to turn up to the rally. He even tweeted, "Be there, it's going to be wild."
Wait, he actually tweeted that? It's going to be wild.
Yeah, he tweeted, "Be there, it will be wild." The reason the date 6th of Jan was chosen was because this was the date when the joint session of Congress and the House of Representatives were going to formally certify Joe Biden and Kamala Harris as the president and vice president of the United States. It's a formality, but Trump had been pressuring Vice President Mike Pence. First of all, Mike Pence. Can we talk about Mike?
Let's talk about Mike Pence.
What is wrong with him?
Mike Pence, his history as Indiana governor, I believe.
Yeah.
Horrible.
Yeah.
Responsible for thousands of deaths. He's so conservative, it's like his hair turned white. Like he's that conservative. Mike Pence is silent but deadly. And it's a shock that he is the last. It seems like he's the only person who can tell Trump how it is.
You know, you were saying about Trump's ego. The person Trump chose virtually has no personality, has no character.
I think that was strategic. I think Mike Pence was chosen for two reasons. One, he doesn't have an outlandish character, and we know Trump cannot handle that. And two, he was there to appeal to the Christian evangelical, that wing of the Republican Party. And he plays his role very, very well. Up until the 6th of January, that rally you're talking about, there was stories coming up that were saying that, Trump was pressuring Mike Pence to not certify the Electoral College. And like you said, it's a formality, and there's ways to go around that. Yeah. And I think up until that rally, you'd had a few Republican senators and members of the House of Representatives saying that, they were going to speak up and they were going to challenge the results of the Electoral College, which is not necessarily unprecedented, but it's unprecedented in the sense that there is no evidence. I think there's been times in the past where people have spoken up, but there's been something there to question the honesty of the election of a particular state. But here what you have is Republicans from different states questioning the vote from other states that, one, they don't belong to. So they don't really have intimate knowledge of that process. But also they're doing it because, A, they don't want to go back home and then deal with the Trump wing in their parties.
Even crazier were senators who were objecting to the results in their own states. So somehow the Democratic Party rigged the election at the national level, but didn't think to kick you out of office. So we get to the 6th of January. We've got this rally, the Save America rally is taking place, or the Stop the Steal rally is taking place. Trump, first of all, Don Jr.
Wait, question. Who's Don Jr. is who? The one who looks like, is he the gummy one who's got
No,
all the gum?
no, that's Eric.
Oh,
Don Jr. is the one Trump hates less.
Because we all know all his love goes to Ivanka.
Yeah, for all the wrong reasons.
Let's not even get into that. Yes. So anyway, so Don Jr.
He's egging on the crowd. First of all these politicians who talk about masculinity and fighting, and I didn't see you serving in Iraq, Afghanistan. Not that in itself that gives you the most gung-ho, war-happy, trigger-happy people. Never really find themselves in harm's way. It's always want to send other people's children to war.
Yeah, I mean, before we, I don't want us to get too far off a tangent. And we will discuss this idea of masculinity having a very set idea of what that looks like and how that idea is then used to essentially beat men who don't fit that and to beat down people who don't fit very strict boxes of masculinity and femininity. Going back to the rally, you had all these Republicans come out and really ramp up the sense of urgency and the sense of emergency. Because even the name Save America, the Save America rally, Stop the Steal, there's a sense of it's happening, you can't let it happen. And so you had Don Jr., you had Ted Cruz, who I absolutely revile.
I don't think he was at the march.
No, but he was at a previous rally. I don't think he was at the 6th of January rally, but he was at one of the rallies wearing a leather coat and really riling up the crowd, talking about, the steal and we can't let it happen and frothing at the mouth.
He was in Congress doing a madness. He had the most disingenuous of all the arguments. He was essentially saying, I don't believe it was stolen, but some people believe it was stolen. So we should investigate because other people are angry and other people believe in it.
Recent polling shows that 39% of Americans believe the election that just occurred, quote, was rigged. You may not agree with that assessment, but it is nonetheless a reality for nearly half the country.
Right. Let them speak for themselves, because Ted Cruz is eyeing up the Trump wing of the Republican Party, and I think he really wants to sell himself to them, and to the detriment of the nation, because this is self-interest put so high above national interest. He shouldn't be a senator.
Honestly, the anti-Cruz adverts write themselves. The man said your wife was ugly. The man said your dad killed JFK.
Wait, was he the Zodiac killer? Is he the same guy? Is he?
I mean, are you saying Ted Cruz is a serial killer? I believe that.
No, didn't Trump say that Ted Cruz's dad is the Zodiac killer? There is something. No, or his dad killed JFK. There is something there. But this is essentially what we're saying. This is a man of no principle and no moral.
But going to the masculinity point, it's one thing to push these toxic narratives, but you're not even adhering to it.
But he wore that leather coat. He was there on the podium shouting at the top of his voice. Was he not the epitome of masculinity?
So we get to the pivotal moment. It's coming to an end. Trump says, we're going to march to Congress, and I'll be there with you.
We're going to the Capitol, but we're going to try and give our Republicans, the weak ones, because the strong ones don't need any of our help. We're going to try and give them the kind of pride and boldness that they need to take back our country. So let's walk down Pennsylvania Avenue. We're going to walk down, and I'll be there with you.
Now, I was watching the certification live. I took a break to go grab something to eat. When I came back, all I see is all types of madness. I see people running up I see people in fur hats. I see a guy in a Viking helmet. I was like,
there was a guy with the zip ties. It was just crazy.
Police are on the House floor addressing the security incidents that are ongoing at the Capitol, saying we had a breach at the Capitol building. Reporters who are on site are tweeting pictures of protesters wearing red Make America Great Again hats who have breached the Capitol building and are outside the Senate.
I don't know, what was going through your mind when you started seeing that?
This is not surprising to me, because for a long time, America has held itself up as a beacon of democracy is a beacon of light. And for those of us who pay attention to the news, pay attention to history, we know that's not true. And for me, this is the culmination of not 2016, but actually 2008, when Obama was elected. And the backlash to having a black man as a president was the Tea Party. There's some people in America who just cannot handle the fact that America is not white and is not run by white men. So I can guarantee that there is an absolutely straight line from the Tea Party to the MAGA people, because they're the same people. There is no difference. There is no daylight between those two groups because they are the same group of people.
Is John McCain to blame for the Sarah Palin pick as VP? What role do you think that played?
I think what that did is it gave these people a valid person in power that they can look up to and say, that person speaks to me. Because before the past decade or so, there was this whole thing about political correctness, right?
Yeah.
If you were racist, if you're sexist, if you're homophobic, there was a sense of shame that I can't say this. Yes, you want to be homophobic and etc., but you can't say this. And what Sarah Palin did, is she became a powerful symbol for these, I don't want to say rednecks, because I think that downplays the seriousness of who these people are, right? And yes, and so remember, Sarah Palin opened the door. Sarah Palin opened Pandora's box to all these, the Ted Cruzes, the Josh Hawleys, the Mitch McConnell. She gave these people strength and power that they never would have had in another time.
But she's just a hockey mom.
I read her book.
Yeah, what's it called?
I forget the name. I'll Google it. But I read her book. I think it was, this is going to bug me, so I'm actually going to look for it now. So I read her book, and clearly she hadn't written it. There was no way Sarah Palin could string complex sentences together, one after the other, and actually make sense.
That's because she was busy patrolling the US-Russia border. Remember when she said her foreign policy credentials were because you could see Russia from...
Because you could see the planes over the border. Going Rogue. That's the name of the book. You remember that? Going Rogue. Yeah. And it was this sense that, she's going rogue, going off the trail. And yeah, Sarah Palin opened the doors to all these freaks, and we're reaping what we sowed all the way back then. Because Ted Cruz, you should be able to go to any person and say, this person cussed out your wife on international news, on every screen internationally.
He didn't just say your wife is unattractive. He said he knows things about her. He said he had receipts on your wife. Again, the adverts write themselves. If you can't protect your wife, how can you protect America? Seriously. Just going back to the scenes in the Senate. Mm-hmm. The first 5 minutes, I just thought it's a couple of protesters who've broken in. Because I don't really have a mental map of what the Senate looks like. So if it was the British Parliament, you would know, like, oh, they're in the House. They've got far. So I wasn't sure when I was watching it which bits are which bit. But then there was a moment when I went on Twitter and there was a picture of someone sitting on the dais, which is the bit where Nancy Pelosi would sit. It hit me that this is serious. The other thought I had, because I think I texted you straight away, was, if this was black people.
They'd be lit up.
I was waiting for the gunshots because somewhere I read when the rioting starts, when the looting starts, the shooting starts.
Apparently not.
I just sat there in amazement. I was like, where are the police?
Yeah. Where's the preparation?
Where is the army? Where are the tanks?
The National Guard. Yeah. Where's the riot police? Where's the line of 5 men deep in riot gear with guns we had when the BLM protesters were protesting outside Washington, D.C. and in that surrounding area, right?
We spoke in our previous episode about the attack on the Michigan state capitol. Heavily armed men once again stormed the Capitol and left with their lives intact. Now,
and a badge. I stormed the Capitol today. Right?
I was watching thinking, any moment we're going to see the military might of America. You're going to see, what was that Trump phrase? Fire and fury like never before. I thought we were going to see fire and fury like never before. Instead, there was a guy rolling up and puffing the magic dragon in front of a bust of Washington.
What was it, that guy who wore that? What was he wearing? Was it a bear fur with the horns? What was that?
It looked like roadkill to me.
What was that?
I have no idea. We'll talk about him in a second. So it's happening. Trump is at this moment tweeting, he's subtweeting Mike Pence, basically saying, you were weak, you failed. Mm-hmm. At the same time he's tweeting, somebody has built a set of gallows outside the Capitol, and they're chanting, hang Mike Pence.
And find Nancy. These people were out for blood. Let's not pretend that this wasn't organized and it wasn't planned, because I think there are some people who just rocked up for a good time and there's some people who really planned. The man in the zip ties and the paramilitary gear.
Yeah.
Planned. There were reports of people going room to room, looking for senators and members of the House. This was not a road trip, school trip gone bad. This was serious. This was all the white Power Rangers got together and to stormtroop the Capitol.
White Power Rangers, what?
Mm.
And then Biden went on TV, calling on the president to get on TV as well and call it out. The thing that struck me is when he said, "This is not who we are."
Such weak sauce. Not Mike Pence. They might as well be the same person, honestly. Actually, that's not true. But
I understand this need to appeal to a higher version of ourselves or a higher version of people to say, look, we're better than this.
Mhm.
Someone needs to point me to which bit of American history tells him that they're better than this. Seriously, which bit of American recent history tells you that what we're watching is un-American? But nothing in recent political history tells us this is un-American. When you had, as we said, people storming the Michigan Capitol.
Yeah, and I would also say that even these recent elections, they were not free or fair, because state after state were implementing rules and regulations that essentially amount to voter suppression. Even this Brad Raffensperger, look at the things that he did during the Georgia Senate runoffs.
Yeah.
Right? So forget recent, we're talking about these same elections that people are contesting. They were not free or fair. In the biggest, one of the biggest democracies in the world, the democracy that's held up as an emblem of what true democracy is.
Yeah.
And so this idea of this is not who we are, no, this is exactly who you are. And the first step to calling people to their higher being is to say, this is your lower being. This is what that lower being looks like. Now move past that and go higher.
Because in American exceptionalist theology, because that's what it is, it's a theology, it's a doctrine, it's a canon. They talk about America is what's the actual phrase? Has a higher calling, is called to a higher purpose. That's it. America is called to a higher purpose. What we were watching was nothing surprising. What was surprising, you said, was the lack of military response. One of the things when I was watching this was how, I don't want to say compliant, but some of the videos afterwards of police taking selfies with the rioters, I was not surprised at all.
No.
So Biden comes out, gives his speech. I think he's in a difficult position to try to give him the benefit of the doubt because we didn't quite understand what was going on. Trump comes out and gives his speech.
It was not even 5 minutes. It was incredible.
Tremendous.
Incredible is the only word. Fabulous. It was absolutely amazing, and it was crazy. How do you end a message to seditious rioters with "We love you, hold tight, go home"? They shouldn't be going home. They should be going to jail cells.
At the very same time, on Fox News, they were saying it's Antifa. So you have to pick one. Is it Antifa and Trump loves Antifa? Or is it the MAGA army and you just have to accept these are your chickens coming home to roost?
Even that whole Antifa thing, Trump said to his people, "Meet me at the Capitol."
Yeah.
Why would Antifa answer that call? And there were no counter protests, by the way. Luckily, there was no Antifa, there was no BLM, there was nothing. There was just, these people just stormed in, no counter protests. So
is MAGA confessing to be sheeple? Are they basically saying one or two Antifa agent provocateurs somehow led you all to commit sedition? What was it? Was it literally red meat? Did they literally throw a T-bone steak and you all descended on the steps of the Capitol? It just didn't make sense.
You can't square the circle. You can't say you're free thinking, but Trump says, "Meet me at the Capitol," and you use your stimulus checks, you buy a ticket people came from Tennessee.
Yeah. People came from California.
Georgia, Texas, on the other side of the country for this.
Trump said, "Cash me outside."
And they really came outside.
And they brought that same energy that they had on Parler, the same energy that they had on Fox, the same energy that they've had on all these dark corners of 4chan and 8chan. And
Reddit.
A couple hours later, the National Guard finally is deployed. We learned later that this was not at Trump's doing, this was Mike Pence. They get back to the house, and you'd think after a riotous mob had just tried to come and kill your colleagues, the tone would have changed. And look, to give credit to McConnell, he called it for what it was. But here's the thing.
Too late. Too little, too late.
You're £5 short and a day late. Your money doesn't cover this. You can't have ridden with Trump for 4 years, for 5 years, ridden the crazy train for 10 years, and try to get off now. It's too
You're a
late.
conductor now.
It's
You're not
too
a
late
passenger.
now.
You're a conductor now.
You're part of the staff. You're part of the furniture.
Mm.
I'm sick and tired of people reacting to the latest outrage and then resigning 6 years. Like, no, wait, everything until now.
Was acceptable. This is the line that you just thought, I can't go over this. So it wasn't the caging of kids. It wasn't the weird Muslim ban. It wasn't the hundreds. How many thousand people have died in America because of COVID?
300,000.
So that wasn't the line that you drew. It was this. Okay. Our morals are very different.
Someone has to explain it to me how the pro-life crowd is somehow comfortable. Do you remember when they were against Obamacare because of death panels? The entire Mike Pence-led COVID response is basically one giant death panel. And here,
I shouldn't even laugh at that.
but someone needs to explain to us how the pro-life lobby, we really should say the anti-choice lobby,
Absolutely. Pro-birth.
caping hard for COVID.
Yeah. They're the same people who refuse to wear masks. I mean, and you have Democratic senators and saying that, we were sheltering with Republicans and they refused to wear their masks. And now I think, is it like up to 3 Democrats now have COVID?
The day after, the recriminations began. But even before that, because the Senate and
Reconvened. Mm-hmm.
There was still an objection.
Some people had the same energy they came into the Capitol with. None of this had changed their minds at all.
I felt that some of the momentum had gone. Was it Wisconsin where who's that senator or representative? The Alabama one. He is dumb as hell. The one is it Louis Gohmert?
Oh,
He's the one whose teeth fell out because of COVID, but still doesn't believe in COVID.
It might be him. It is him with the teeth. Yeah.
Anyway, one of them objected to, I think it was Wisconsin, or they didn't have just to explain, to launch an objection, you need one person from the Senate and one person from the House of Representatives. He launched an objection but couldn't get one person from the other place to join him into it, so it failed.
Democrat leaders in Milwaukee illegally and unconstitutionally created more than 200 illegal polling places. Tens of thousands of votes were changed by workers despite election workers' objections, plus so many other illegalities to fraudulently create a 20,000 vote lead.
Representative Louis Gohmert's objection to Wisconsin's electoral votes was short-lived since not even a single senator joined his challenge.
So inevitably, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were formally chosen as the president and vice president-elect. What was interesting was the aftermath. Fox News and the Trumpistas.
Really, that's the perfect name.
One of my favorite takes was that the initial video of Trump denouncing the protest, the fake denouncing, was a deep fake.
Really? Any reason to not think Trump could have done this? Anything to just give him a pass? That's crazy. Of course Trump is who he says he is. Of course we see him do the same thing over and over and over again. And I'm continuously surprised that people are surprised that we love you to the, when he said, go home in peace, we love you. You're not ending a concert.
I know your pain. I know you're hurt. We had an election that was stolen from us. It was a landslide election, and everyone knows it, especially the other side. But you have to go home now. We have to have peace. We have to have law and order. We have to respect our great people in law and order. We don't want anybody hurt. It's a very tough period of time. There's never been a time like this where such a thing happened, where they could take it away from all of us, from me, from you, from our country. This was a fraudulent election, but we can't play into the hands of these people. We have to have peace. So go home. We love you. You're very special.
I just remember Susan Collins, Maine.
Yes, I do not like that woman.
Is she a Republican? She's a Republican, isn't she?
Of course, she's a Republican, yes.
So when she voted against Trump's impeachment the first time, she said she believed he'd learned his lesson.
Does Trump look like a man who learned lessons? We all know he didn't when he was in is it UPenn that he went to university? We know he wasn't passing his exams.
He's incapable of learning lessons. She said he thought he learned his lesson.
Did he tell you that he's learned a lesson? What about his conduct has
Yeah.
led you to believe that he's learned his lesson?
Before the impeachment, Twitter, do you want to talk us through that whole arc in this crazy story?
Oh that I think that in itself is an episode on its own. But the
Yeah.
short take is Twitter immediately. I think initially they had given him a 2-week suspension, and then they shortly
12-hour suspension.
12-hour suspension, and
Yeah.
then they perma-banned him. So he was permanently banned. And then I think they permanently banned him after he released that video where he called off his dogs. Essentially, he told them, "We love you. Go home. See you later. But for now, you're embarrassing me. Go home.
We loves you.
We love you." Yeah, exactly. It's like ending a concert. We love you. Go home. And then they permanently banned him. And then that then kicked off. I think Facebook followed.
Facebook and Instagram had initially given him a 24-hour ban, and then they
Then they perma-banned him as well.
yeah.
And I think I think only a couple of days ago, YouTube then banned his channel as well.
Yeah.
Because I think he had released his "We Love You" video on YouTube as well. And kind of going back to what you said earlier about now Twitter, this is the time you ban him.
Yeah.
This is the thing that he did that you thought, no, this absolutely breaks our terms of service. Facebook of all places, the Facebook, which is the ground of radicalization of all these people. YouTube as well, which the algorithm literally leads people down a darker and darker and darker path to these sorts of videos. And they just thought, this is too much, we're going to ban him. And of course, in all of this, there's a conversation about obviously freedom of speech.
Yeah.
These massive corporations having a level of power that a lot of us should be uncomfortable with. But I think we'll discuss that at a different time.
There's a really funny moment when Trump was banned from Twitter, and then he hopped onto over the last 4 years, he's been using his personal Twitter.
Yes.
Hops onto the POTUS one.
Yes, he did.
Gets banned off that, and I think he tried to jump on another one. The campaign Twitter. I think he got
No,
banned.
he did.
Someone needs to find his burner phone, his burner account.
He was just trying all the different masks. Jeez, yeah.
It's easy to act tough now because now you know he's going to be gone in 6, 7, 8 days. You didn't have that same energy all these 4 years.
Yeah.
There was a suggestion that he would move to Parler, which is basically a right-wing cesspool of the worst of the worst.
Mm-hmm.
It's a digital basket of deplorables.
Literally.
But then Amazon pulled their kind of back-end services from Parler, so Parler was taken offline, and then before that, Apple had taken them off their...
Yeah, and then Parler sued. I think they're suing Amazon now, apparently.
As you said, this raises all kinds of questions, and I know you and I, we're deeply uncomfortable by the power that big tech wields and the power of corporations. But you lose your right to complain when you didn't mind a bakery not selling cake to a gay couple. If you're okay with a bakery discriminating against people based on their sexuality, then you have nothing to say about a company banning somebody for breaking the terms of the terms and conditions of using the site.
Yeah.
Isn't this the invisible hand of the market?
There needs to be, what did you text me? It's called the invisible slap of Adam Smith. There needs to be consistency with this. And it's something that I've been, thinking about for the past few days about, of course, with the baker situation, it did trouble me. And slight detail, fine, baker ordinary. If someone's coming to your bakery, they just want an ordinary pre-baked cake, they can buy it. If it's a wedding cake, that can be seen as a form of art expression. People shouldn't be allowed to bake. For example, you wouldn't go to an African-American bake and say, bake this Nazi cake for me with Heil Hitler on it.
Yeah.
Right. But if we're saying that corporations and businesses are supreme, then we must be consistent with that. Unless we're saying that Twitter, Facebook, these social media companies are not just telecommunication giants. They're providing a service that is sort of a bit journalistic, a bit entertainment, but then why have you let them get too big?
Which is actually Trump's argument with the Section 230.
Yeah.
The other issue is this. Stop crying cancel culture. Stop crying freedom of speech. You are the president of the United States. You can go on any channel you want. You have a whole comms department
Fox
dedicated.
News. You have Fox News.
Again,
Yes.
I am sick and tired of people going on primetime TV to complain about how they've been silenced. People writing for the best-selling newspapers in this country talking about how they've been cancelled, how they've been silenced.
Mm-hmm.
Make it make sense. Who has taken your platform away?
Right.
People on the right like to play the victim. Ironically,
Yeah.
people who talk about victim culture, who talk about identity politics.
Also, all politics is identity politics. When you have a policy, for example, that targets old people, for example, in the UK, is it old people get no fuel tax or they get free fuel or whatever that is? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, and historically they'd get, say, the TV license, the triple lock on the pension,
Exactly.
winter fuel duty, I think is the policy you're talking about.
Yes. If that's a policy that targets a particular group based on their age. Any policy, for example, that targets universities is for people who want to attend universities or work in
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
field. All politics is identity politics. Policies are shaped around people's immutable characteristics based on their sex, their gender, their age, their ethnicity. All politics is identity politics. Is how you choose to use that. And also, J.K. Rowling, sidebar, that's one thing that's really irked me over the past few months was no one snatched you off Twitter. You still have a Twitter account. You are a multi-millionaire. You live in relative safety compared to most people on the planet. You had a website that you wrote this long-ass article based on nothing. No one is canceling you because you don't like trans people. The fact that I know you don't like trans people, despite what you may say, means that you have had a platform and has been able to reach people.
That is an amazing point.
Unless you came outside my window and shouted it into my house, how did I find out about your weird, wonderful views?
It's true.
Because you have Twitter and Facebook, and some of these people have never gotten a suspension, never been banned, have their own websites, have their own PR people.
Yeah.
You're not suffering.
One last thing before we talk about the impeachment. Straight after the election, there were all these hot takes that Washington, D.C. is being boarded up because Trump is going to win and the left is going to go into a meltdown and they're going to attack and root. Right. People know that anything that goes on Twitter is saved forever. Even if you delete it.
So there's some people who tweet like they don't know that. Yeah.
I won't name names yet because we're going to do a special on that. We're going to do a special takedown. We're going to unpick some of these charlatans in future episodes. I just wondered what their response was going to be to the thing they had predicted, looting and rioting, except by the wrong people, ignored it.
No, but Antifa did it, right?
If Antifa did it, what's your objection to basically giving them the 10 years that... Because remember, Trump said, you touch government property, you get 10 years, no questions asked.
Yeah.
No foibles, no quibbles.
Yeah. And I hate Trump for doing this to me, but I am critical of the police, as everyone should be. We should have a healthy skepticism towards institutions that have power over us.
Yeah.
And when I was reading about that, that 10-year prison sentence, no one should be getting 10 years for going into the Capitol. So apparently it's a crime to walk up the steps of the Capitol and go in unless... They shouldn't have done that because I think on that particular day it's illegal, whatever.
Knowingly trespassing federal property.
Exactly. No one should get 10 years for that. I think there should be some form of punishment, but that is too harsh.
Yeah.
But once again, we live in a society that is punitive and we're proud of our punitive ways. And so for the people who cheered on Trump when he wrote that 10-year bill, you now have to sit in that. That guy with the fur, the zip ties, all these weirdos who came out and went into the Capitol, if you get 10 years, you were the same person that cheered for those 10 years.
I'm not saying they should have shot the protesters. I don't think they should have shot the protesters.
Same.
But if you're not going to shoot them, don't shoot us.
Exactly. Show the same level of restraint
Right.
that you have shown, the same incredible level of restraint, the same care for human life. Let that be consistent with every single group.
There were images of people being escorted out, not restrained, not in handcuffs, being shown the way out. Because these big federal government buildings are easy to get lost in. My friend texted me that a meme that if they'd stormed Parliament, they'd have got lost there for hours. But some of these people, I'm sure, got lost. They had to be shown the way out.
Yeah.
Talking about the Viking guy. So he was arrested and essentially went on a hunger strike because he said he only eats organic food. And his mom said if he eats non-organic food, he'll get sick. The judge, I think in the bail hearing or one of the kind of preliminary hearings, ruled that the police have to give him organic food. I'm not saying don't give him organic food, but we ain't eating organic food when we're arrested.
Yeah.
We're eating fists, batons, you know?
Yeah.
We're not saying treat these people badly because we're humanists first and foremost.
Yeah.
To be progressive is to care about people and to care about equality
people.
before the law. We're not saying that people need to be treated badly. We believe in the rule of law. We believe in the process of the rule of law. If you're going to stop a Burger King to give my man a burger, you just committed an atrocity.
Yeah.
Next time one of us asks for that,
do it consistently, right? So the children at the borders, those detention centers at the borders, there was all these outbreaks of all these diseases because they were kept in such horrible conditions. If the law says that they are criminals, they have crossed the border illegally, treat them the same way. Human dignity should be afforded to every single person. That's what we're saying. I'm against police brutality, and I was amazed at the incredible restraint that was shown during the riots. And my question was, I think, like every single person out there was, where is this when Black people protest, when you had those BLM marches? Where was this? Why is it that people are peacefully marching? Here comes a pepper spray. Here comes a riot gear. Here come the tanks.
because all this tells us is you know how to treat people better.
Exactly. You don't need training. Biden and I'm going to be cussing Biden throughout this coming year because I know Biden is a weak sauce anyway. Biden says, the police need more training. The police don't need more training. It is clear that, like you said, they know how to show restraint. They know how to handle people. They know how to shackle people. They know how to de-escalate. They don't need an extra training. They need humanity.
Yeah. Moving to was there anything else you want to say before we move to the impeachment?
No.
So impeachment, lots of angry people, especially the ones who had been attacked in their own offices, in their own places of work. Again, sidebar. The violation of someone coming into your workplace, sitting at your desk and putting their feet on your table. Again, I don't know if this is real, but I saw that tweet I sent to you earlier today. Someone 5'4" apparently stole all of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's shoes.
No, that is true. I went and checked on her thing.
Yeah.
Someone did steal all her shoes.
Rumor is it's Ben Shapiro, allegedly. Is he 5'4"?
Maybe. I think so. I think he's quite short. And this is another character we'll talk about in the future. He's my pet hate. I love hating on Ben Shapiro.
But essentially, the people with the power to impeach the president had also been the people who had been the subject of the attack.
Yes.
Just from a self-interested point of view, any other politician would do as much as they can to try to cool things down, to try to get on people's good side, even purely out of self-interest. But I don't know if you saw Trump basically said his speech was appropriate.
Yeah, I saw that.
One of the things we've seen in the last few days is this: let's move on. Let's hold hands, dance around the fire, singing Kumbaya. Let's move on because impeaching Trump will cause more division. Were you in the kind of let's impeach him, let's prosecute him, or
all of the above? Let's fullest extent of the law. If you can impeach him, you can then convict him in the Senate. You can remove his ability to run again. You can then open him up to more, cases about his businesses. All of it, fullest extent of the law. Why is it always when things happen, the victims are always told, let it go, move on?
Yeah.
No, you only move on once you've received justice.
Yeah.
It's been absolutely terrifying for all the people in the building, sitting there in the safe rooms or whatever they're called.
Yeah.
Cowering because Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is one of the more prominent voices on the Democratic side.
Yeah. Yeah.
She said, you look at policemen and you don't know if they're there to harm you or to help you.
That is crazy.
Is absolutely terrifying. That is traumatic.
This argument that it's only going to divide the country further.
The country's already divided.
Where were you 10 days ago? Where were you 10 days ago? And you know what? 2 weeks ago, you even had the added benefit of Christmas, the season of coming together.
I mean, minus the war and Christmas, of course.
Right. You had the added benefit of Christmas to bring the country together, yet you've been pushing this scam. Did you hear that Ted Cruz was fundraising during the riot?
Yeah. I think an email got sent out or a tweet or something.
Yeah, it's like
during
Ted Cruz here. So creepy. It's like a slimy creep into someone's DMs. Ted Cruz here.
I don't want to body shame him. I don't want to compare him to a blobfish. I'm not going to do that.
But he's so slimy.
He is. No moral character whatsoever.
So the Democrats have impeached Donald Trump. So for people
Second
who
time.
don't know, that impeachment is basically charging. It's not in itself finding anybody guilty of anything. It's basically saying, we hereby charge you of this crime in the House of Representatives. And then the Senate has to hold a trial and find you guilty or acquit you. Do you think he's going to be found guilty?
So Mitch McConnell, who's the head of the Senate, he's the leader of the Senate, didn't he? So he said that he wasn't going to allow.
Majority leader, yeah.
Yeah, so he's not going to allow an emergency session. So if there is a court case, if there is a case to be made, it's going to be heard on the 19th, and Trump's last day in office is the 20th.
Yeah.
So that gives less than 2 days for the case to be made, because like you said, it's a court case, and essentially the prosecutors are the people who are making the charge, which is mostly the Democrats and 10 Republicans, and they have to make their case. And I think the president also has to have time to answer those charges. And I don't think there's going to be enough time to do that. Now, I've been trying to see if there's any legal precedents as to whether you can still do the trial, even if there's a new precedent.
Yeah.
Some say yes, some say no, because also there's no legal precedent. Like, this has literally never happened before.
Yeah.
So
I've got this thought at the back of my mind, but I might be wrong. Isn't that why Nixon resign before he got impeached?
Yes. I think Nixon impeached?
I was impeached.
I think Nixon was impeached, but the case didn't go forward because he didn't have enough days. Yes,
Right.
Nixon was impeached for Watergate. Was he? Yes, there was an impeachment process that started, but I think it never came to full fruition like Trump's first impeachment, because they just thought, well, he's about to resign, and then Ford gave him the pardon. I swear to you, if Biden pardons Trump, I'm not American, but I will go to the American embassy.
I mean,
he cannot do that. But I can see Biden doing that because Biden is weak.
Yeah. He came out for $15 minimum wage.
Oh, yay.
I mean, one of the things about
But
the
it's so
Georgia
low.
Senate races is that none of the Democrats are in charge of 2 of the 3 branches of government. They have no excuses.
Because they don't have the Supreme Court, but they have the executive, and they just have the legislative. Yeah.
Speaking of impeachment, some of the Republicans still in positions of leadership now were present when Bill Clinton got impeached. First of all, Bill Clinton is trash.
100%.
This is in no way a defense of what Bill Clinton did.
Not at all.
Bill Clinton did not incite an insurrection.
No, he didn't. Bill Clinton gave you a surplus. So that is not to say what he did was wrong. For those who don't know, Bill Clinton, what's the name of that woman? Monica Lewinsky. There was a whole thing. It was an abuse of power. It was not right, and I think he was rightly impeached.
If you lost your mind, because here's the thing, they impeached him because they said on grounds of adultery.
The moralism.
But breaking into, I know it's a point that's been made over and over again, but if Abdul and Mohammed had marched on Capitol Hill,
absolutely, yeah,
they'd still be shooting now.
They'd just be shooting the dead corpse.
I'm telling you, they would invoke Article 5 of the NATO, which basically says if one NATO country is attacked, or they would still be going.
Mm-hmm. It would be 9/11 too, but whatever date, 6/12, whatever.
Less people died in Benghazi, yet there were like 20 odd hearings about Benghazi. But
Hillary sat there for 7 hours.
Wow, crazy.
Talking about that.
Wow, it's only the 14th of January.
And I'm already tired.
Can we just agree 2020 isn't over?
2020 has this long shadow, and this is that. Trump had 21 days to just shut up and just don't do anything. Just sit there, be quiet. And this is what he does.
Can we move to like an Islamic calendar or like a pre-Gregorian calendar? You know, one of these calendars that has more than 12 months or, works in a different time frame. And just say that this 2020 isn't over. And then on the third moon sighting of the year formerly known as 2021, we will start year 0.
Or let's start 2021 when Biden finally, is inaugurated.
Is that the 21st or the 20th?
21st.
Ah, see? It was meant to be.
I predict that Trump will pardon himself.
Yeah?
Yeah, no, Trump is absolutely pardoning himself. And he's giving himself a blank check. Like, I'm just pardoning myself. Any crimes I commit between now
Yeah.
and the 20th of January midnight.
I think, hey, I'm not, a legal scholar, or I'm not legal anything, because I'm not a legal scholar suggests I've done law, but I'm not quite at the.
I dip my toes.
No, but I think pardoning somebody or yourself is a bit like pleading manslaughter. You're admitting that you've killed somebody, but you're saying that there were
Yes.
mitigating circumstances. So you can't say you can't plead innocent. You can't say
Yes.
you have to plead guilty to something, but then say there were mitigating
Yeah,
circumstances.
because you have to be convicted for your crime to be erased, because you have to be convicted of a crime for it to be erased. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. Or he'll find a way.
What's that thing Americans have? Escrow accounts?
They also don't have healthcare, so.
You can't have a pardon gift card. You can't prepay the pardon.
No, I see him doing it. I see him doing it because there's been reports of him, asking the legal scholars in the White House whether he can do it. And I think he technically can, because the power of the pardon is one of the most least regulated powers. Like, it's literally carte blanche. He can do whatever he wants, which is why he's pardoning all these people.
So our next episode is in 2 weeks' time.
If
Thereabouts.
we're alive.
What are you going to talk about in 2 weeks' time?
I don't want to be talking about Trump for more than 5 minutes. I want to just say, okay, weirdly, he just went, he fizzled, and maybe there's some federal court cases, but we'll find out later. Yeah, and I think also we'll maybe bring it home a bit. So there's a few important things that have happened in the UK. Brexit,
Yeah,
and
that
maybe the
happened.
fallout of Brexit.
Yeah.
The fish, the ham sandwiches, all of that good stuff.
So that brings the end to our first real episode. I think it's gone a lot smoother. They're getting smoother. Maybe that's just in my mind, But I think
Look at you giving yourself a report card, Mark, before you even locked off the first episode.
Well, thank you for joining us on our 2-week review.
Our inaugural 2021 episode.